veterans, and we must listen to them. Veterans Affairs Canada received comments from more than 12,000 Canadians regarding the concept for this monument. The veterans, their families, and others who participated in that mission are, for the most part, those who commented on those concepts. The concept of the Simpson team more accurately respects the comments of veterans, their families, and other participants in that mission during our consultation of public opinion. It is really essential to listen to veterans and honor their choice.
Mr. Chair, I'll close with this. What we have here is a political smear campaign that has far exceeded the partisan attacks and the partisan maneuvers we have seen in this place in other committees. In order to get to other committee business, in order to be able to do the things that are important to people, in order to be able to do the things that are for veterans, for example, in other committees, we have seen similar motions seeking the production of documents from the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Council office. But the following committees have actually adopted motions without the inclusion of PMO and PCO. The Ethics Committee had several motions about Chinese interference that included the PMO, where the committee agreed to remove the PMO. The Foreign Affairs Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Citizenship and Immigration Committee, and the Health Committee. There is a way to resolution of this impasse, and I would encourage everyone in the interest of veterans, which seems to be a bit of a novel concept, to try to put some water in their wine and to try to get through this impasse in a reasonable fashion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. And on my list, I have Mr. Sarai and Mr. Desilets. Mr. Sarai, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I thank my colleague, Mr. Casey, on shedding light on this. Look, when you want a process, when we do a process and we don't consult veterans, we don't consult the stakeholders in it, the product you get is might be artistically great, but would not be something that people want. The previous government and the previous Minister for Veterans decided to put a monument under a bridge, tuck it away where only bicyclists could possibly drive by and wave to it, where the opposite was done. I guess when the victims of communists got a huge, glorious spot along Wellington Street for the whole world to see, while those who served and died for Afghanistan were about to get a spot between the Portage Bridge for, again, cyclists to wave on. Veterans were in uproar. They said they don't get it. They don't get it at all. This was done, and if you look at who it was conversed with, who knew, they said literally virtually no one. I think they checked with several veterans groups. None said they were consulted about the spot as an appropriate location to honor the 158 Canadian Forces members killed and the 40,000 who served during that 12-year mission. Even our Legion, the Royal Canadian Legion, said it didn't know a thing about it, except that Dow's Lake was once a candidate. Bruce Monroe, I think the president of the Year-Old Veterans Association of Canada, said the group was not contacted. He's not only sold on the site, but appears he was couldn't even find it and thought it was tucked away. Accessibility is everything too. I think veterans, as they had said at the time, if it's too far off the beaten track, pretty soon you can see the dandelions creeping in and skateboarders doing tricks on it. And jogger may run by it, but won't look back at it twice. It might be like a war itself, another forgotten war. These were the comments that the Veterans Affairs Office and the public heard after the previous decision was made. The main problem they had, that they were not consulted. They were not consulted on the final product, on the commemoration, the sacrifices, the location. And that's why in May of 2021, the Government of Canada posted a survey. They asked veterans, families of those who participated in the mission, Canadian Armed Forces members, other stakeholders, and the public, Canadian public, to share their thoughts on the design concepts proposed by the following 5 finalists. There was the Team HAPA Collaborative. There was the Team Lashley McDonald concept. There was the concept from Team PFS Studio. There was the Team Stimson. And the results after had over 12,000, I think 12,048 valid surveys were analyzed. There was 10,829 in English, 1,219 in French. In cases where multiple surveys were submitted from the same IP address, they were deemed to be overly similar or overly similar. All but one survey was only removed, so we can say that it was a fairly free vote and no manipulation occurred in that regards. The questions were pretty thorough. The first question was on monument theme. Following question was asked. This means that each respondent could select more than one answer. As a result, percentages may have added up to more than 100%, but you get to see how people felt about each. The monument had several related themes. Which designs you think most effectively express those themes? You were able to select the themes that appropriated to you. The themes were to express Canada's deep gratitude for the sacrifices made by Canadians who served in Afghanistan, including those Canadian Armed Forces members and civilians who lost their lives or were injured. There was 11,807 respondents. Team Doused got 26.5% of thought that people the surveyed thought that there was reflected it well. Team HAPA Collaborative got 13%. Team McDonald, Lashley McDonald, got 20.5%. Team PFS Studios got 16.8%. And Team Stimson got 63.9%, 64%, more than double of any other of the closest, which Team Douse was probably the closest at 26.5. So 2.5 times that response. The next question that was asked with respects to team, which was to recognize the strong support offered by families, friends, and communities at home and during the mission. Again, the 11,299 people responded. 27% thought Team Douse was had the best in that regards. 15.5% thought Team HAPA, and 17% McDonald, and 14% thought Team's PFS Studio. But Team Stimson got 52%. Again, double the amount of the nearest, the closest to reflect on that. When we go to acknowledge the efforts of Canadians in standing together with Afghan people to help rebuild their country and encourage understanding of the significance and scope of the Canadian mission. Again, 11,500 people. These are pretty comprehensive surveys, I might add, with a very strong response. 31% thought Team Doused, 13 on HAPA Collaborative, and Team Stimson was 56%. Again, doubling the, virtually doubling the second highest amount. The second most thing, I guess, which people, besides commemoration, is how many people will see it, what's the visitor experience. So there are questions asked with respects to do you think the design effectively performs the following for a visitor experience of functions? Again, over 11,500 responded. Team Douse got a good response of 37%. Others were 19 and a half, 22, but Team Stimson got 54% of the response in favor that it gave the best visitor experience when one came to see it. The other question was encouraging visitors to learn more about the mission. This is something that museums and commemoration is an important thing to do, is how do you raise the inquisitiveness of a visitor to learn about what has happened and what it's commemorating. Again, out of the 11,334, Team Douse got 22.8, I won't go into the other ones. They were ranging between 12 and 18%. But Team Stimson was 65%. The 65% thought it gave more of a visitor experience. And then the setting, providing for gatherings and ceremonies, because that's a very important part. Team Douse got a good response of 40%. Others were 12, 27, 20, and 13%. But again, Team Stimson stood out with 52%, 51.9%. These effectively show that the effect of the design of a Team Stimson on the effect of visitors, on effect of location, on effect of commemoration, had an overwhelming impact. It wasn't even close when we look at others. The other questions that were just impressions of the proposed monument designed, was one more cold, was one more peaceful, was one more solemn. I think, again, Team Stimson's designs showed a very high result in those regards. And when we looked at the French results, and particularly a high majority, I assume, would have come from Quebec to reflect those. The results were not any different from those that came from Anglophone Canadians and other parts of Canada. So I think that was clearly reflective, that there were neutral designs, there were great designs, and however, certain attested to people's feelings and affections and responses more so when that was always this Team Stimson design. Even to find out how many of these were from National Capital Region, because sometimes people from my neck of the woods will always say it's a little biased. I think only 2,700 responses came from this region, and that's obviously still with a high veteran population, as well as Ontario and Quebec population that would have been, and a strong government, bureaucratic, and military presence, and that was about 25%. British Columbia received 1,000 responses, 1,084. That's 13.64% of the thing. I think that is quite reflective of our population in respect to the rest of Canada. So it seemed like the diversity and the demographics of Canada were respected well. Alberta got 1,200, 15%. In fact, I would say a little bit overly representative. But when you go across all the spectrums, including Atlantic Canada, I think it was fairly across the perspective. So all categories, all provinces, all jurisdictions, and all demographics were respected. And lastly, I would just like to say that when it came to the category of, whether there's a lot of debate and questions that this committee has looked at as whether how many were veterans and whatnot. I think when people were asked who you are, did you participate in Canada's government mission in Afghanistan? Are you either as a Canadian Armed Forces member, police officer, or public servant, or civilian? And 28%, 3,000 of the respondents had stated they were. Whether you are a family member or individual who participated in Canada's whole of government mission, that included, again, CAF members, police officers, public servants, or civilians, there was another 12.5%, 1,300 members. The third highest category was a veteran of Canada's military. Again, people who have served. 2,800, 26% stated they were. And if there were current members of Canadian Armed Forces, 2,500 or 23% of the Canadian of those serving were Canadian Armed Forces members. And if they were current or former Canadian police officers that we respect as veterans, 300. And then the general public, which is about a third, were about 3,876. So I think this gives you a perspective that this was not a small consultation. It was not a small poll. This was a very comprehensive study, and I think we should move on with the wishes of the veterans and get to the real work, which is building this monument.
Thank you, Mr. Sarai, and I remind the committee that we are still discussing the amendment of Mr. Kissy. And on my list, I have Mr. Desilets, Mr. Ruff, and Ms. Epner. And I also want to welcome Ms. MP Alex Ruff at the committee. And we also have someone, Jack Maziad, who are there to help our clerk. So welcome to both of you. And Mr. Desilets, à vous la parole.
The floor is yours. Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief in order not to play the game of the Liberals and enable them to get to the end of the committee meeting